Well, I've had a week off and the weather's been lovely and the bike was running so well. And then I got an injury on Monday morning, which meant I couldn't do anything. So, so as it happened, there were a couple of little jobs that I wanted to get round to on the bike, and I was waiting for something major to go wrong. So I had an excuse to drag it inside and do all these fiddly little jobs as well. But nothing has. It's just been really good. I've had a bit of trouble with the float level. If you find your bike, you got one of these, and it's struggling at high speed, like you open it up and it just blah, 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 and it gives you trouble for a bit after that. Also, if it won't tick over, it turned out with me to be the float level. And I set the float level to the requisite amount, but I'm very unsure because is it with it loose upside down, or was it with it pressed down ever so slightly so it touches the thing? And I don't know, but I put it back on and it piddled petrol out, so then I closed it up a bit more and it stopped piddling petrol out quite so much, although it still does if you leave the petrol tank on. So that's where we are with the float level. A bit much, but not pouring out. Perfectly all right as long as you remember to turn the fuel off. Oh yeah, and it cured the problems at high speed. It absolutely ripped. So back again after about a month of head scratching and searching through the ignition system. But that was all last weekend. That was just, when it was running nicely, getting it running nicely, and I was all happy, and then I couldn't ride. So what I did was I put on these. I've had lights here, these two little lights here, on Harleys and Big Twins of the era, Sportsters and Big Twins of the era. They show you the oil pressure, the oil pressure is coming on, and they'll show you the generator's working. Now I've got the green one on my oil pressure because it's got a green wire, and for no other reason. I genuinely don't know which way around these are supposed to go. The red one for the generator because it's electric and red's dangerous. Okay. I did wire these up a few months after I put it on the road, but I put very, very cheap little LEDs in and they fell apart very quickly, like within a week. So I've had the wiring but not the lights for all this time. Basically, your generator's charging because the battery doesn't go flat. And your oil pump's going because before you go, you look in the oil hole where you fill it, and you should see a trickle coming back to it. But obviously that's not as good as, seeing it on a light and not having to take your side panel off and check for a trickle. I can't speak for the generator one, but I know how the oil pump one works. What it is it's a long wire going to a switch on the end of the oil pump itself. So the wire, it's like all the way down here, back down here, and underneath it, and up to the front on that side where the oil pump is. So it's a really long wire, and it's one piece in this case. And its natural state is earthed. So you've got a power lead going to one terminal on the light from your accessories contact breaker here, and that'll be orange. That's the official colour. And then going from that, you have the green one, which is an earth wire, because that goes all the way down here, and it goes to the oil pump, the switch on the end of the oil pump. And normally, that terminal is resting against something that's the metal shell of the oil pump, and it's bolted to the frame, so that's earthed. So when you turn the bike on, it lets current through from the battery, through the circuit breaker, to the light. Theoretically, and when I had the old lights on before they packed up, you start the bike, the oil pump starts working, and it physically pushes the contact away, breaks the circuit, and the green light goes out. If the green light doesn't go out, or if the green light comes on when you're riding, you have to stop the bike immediately because that's not good. And check the old-fashioned way by looking in the oil filler and seeing if it returns. If it doesn't, you're definitely in trouble. So the oil light, at least, and probably the generator light as well, the oil light is a very simple circuit. It's battery to bulb, then earth to, earth, which is the switch. The switch is earth. And when the switch disengages, the earth's broken and the light goes out. I find I don't need a neutral light because just let the clutch out and see what happens. That lets you know if you're neutral. I don't need an indicator light because I can see the indicators, so that's okay. I don't need anything to tell me what gear I'm in because I can count up to 4. It's fine. In fact, the only reason I got a high beam light, because again, there's 2 indications. 1, the beam is high. 2, that lever is flipped up. But I do have high beam light purely because it's on the rev counter and it seems silly not to use it. For the past 6 months or so, I had the high beam light wired up to the low beam, so that was confusing. That's fine now. The other thing I wanted to rectify, I've done a lot of things like hiding away the few exposed wires that were knocking around. But the other thing I wanted to rectify was on a Harley-Davidson, you turn the ignition on and you can ride it and honk the horn and use the indicators, and then you turn the key to turn the ignition on, then you turn it one more turn and that turns the lights on front and back, which is great, but they only seem to have a high and a dip. They don't have a pilot light or a running light, which I'm really used to on various vehicles. I tend to use the running light and the rear light when it's dimpsy, and when it gets too dark, when it gets so dark that I need to see where I'm going, then the headlight comes on. Now, I don't like using the headlight all the time. The reason being because I am dirt poor, and headlight bulbs are a tenner. Whereas running light bulbs, you can get them tenner for 10. So this is a much better thing. And this is how we do it down my end of the scale, right? You ride along and you're using your pilot light as much as you can. And then all of a sudden, right, you're riding along and you've got to use your headlight and your dip beam goes. And it's always the dip beam, right, because that's the one you use most. So what you do then is you get the headlight and you unscrew it a little bit and you turn it down so that the main beam is now the dip beam. Okay, if you're with me so far, it's got no dip beam now. The main beam is the dip beam. And that's kind of your cue to buy another bulb to start saving you pennies. And the absolute definite point where you've got to do it is when that goes as well and all you've got is the pilot light, and you can't go anywhere at night anymore. So of course the Harley doesn't have this facility. It only has 2 chances, whereas I've been used to having 3. So what I've done is that switch sends power to the lighting circuit breaker a bit under the seat. Is it a circuit breaker? Yes. And then that wire goes all the way along here. It also goes to the back as well, because you've got lights there. It goes all the way up to here. And then that goes, in this instance, now to a pilot light that's in there. Then so when you turn the lights on, you turn the ignition on, and that comes on. Yep, there's my lights there. So now when you turn the lights on, you've got the backlight and you've got the pilot light, just to let people know you're there. And I've added this generic switch on top of here. So when I turn this on, hopefully that's the dip beam. And then this operates as normal. Got high beam indicator comes on. And when you turn it off, it goes down. And if it's getting lighter and you don't need to see where you're going anymore, you turn that off and you've still got that. And you've still got the backlight, which I think is very useful for motorways anyway, because they tend to be lit. So there, and then you turn the light off and it goes off. And it goes off at the front as well. And then you can just about see the lights here. You turn the ignition off and that goes off. So that's been my week. I've had other things going on. I won't go into that, but the pleasant bits have been dicking around with this and getting it much, much closer every time I do something like this. Yeah, it gets more real world usable every time I go on a splurge like this. I'm really happy with the results. Anyway, that's it for the time being. Cheerio, bye.